Not Quite Right features discussions that are unfiltered and uncensored and may include themes that are inappropriate for younger listeners. Also, I swear a lot.
Something doesn't seem quite right.
Welcome to Not Quite Right. My name's Ed.
And I'm Amanda.
And welcome to the third Daredevil for the January 2026 Not Quite Right prize. Daredevils are people who've signed up for the honour and the privilege of having their story decimated on the podcast.
Sorry, can you elaborate? Decimated.
Decimated. 1 in 10 words destroyed, I believe is the dictionary definition. So we will read the story, talk about the story, break it down, share our thoughts, and the aim, as always, is to all learn something together in the process.
Or at least for 1 in 10 of us to learn something.
So today's little babe in the woods
It's very evocative.
has written for Team Amanda, the losing team.
Oh, all right.
Oh.
But the team that did in fact contain the winning story,
true.
I
Yeah,
would like to remind
Hang
you.
your hat on something, don't you? So tell us what the prompts were.
So the prompts in Team Amanda were the word draw, the action of chasing, and the kicker, which was to prominently feature a law of some kind. Flexible on the interpretation of law.
And yeah, so our little victim for this episode is Ryan Fleming,
Hi, Ryan.
who we heard very recently on the Writing in Progress podcast. Speaking about this very competition along with Autumn
Indeed.
Bettinger. It was fantastic to hear people talk about us in that way and say nice things as well, most importantly.
Well, they know we're going to listen, so, they got to choose their words very carefully. He might have something a little different to say after this episode.
May well.
But look, Ryan did not make the long list on this occasion. However, he is no stranger to competition success. And in fact, that's why he often appears on the Writing in Progress podcast, because he was a winner in the Writers Playground competition. So he knows what he's doing. He knows his way around a pen/keyboard. But hopefully we can shed some light today on what it was about this story that maybe kept it from the long list from our perspective.
And it wasn't too far off. This is one of those stories that got the dreaded cut when one or more judges gives it a maybe plus or higher, but we had to make some hard decisions to keep it down to 40. So not too far off. But yeah, let's get into the story and talk about it. And I'm reading this story on this occasion. So here is Recycled by Ryan Fleming. My tears dripped onto the cardboard box. You know your father's rule, Jake. No clutter in the house. I didn't care about the sleek new refrigerator or how much it cost. I disregarded the creed for cleanliness. All I wanted was the box. I pleaded. I promise my rocket ship will be out of the way, or it could be a fort in the garage. Maybe Dad would. My mum put a firm hand up. Your father is working late again tonight and doesn't have time for silly games. He and I will not permit you to junk up your room with this garbage. Our house, our rules. You'll understand when you have kids. Years of suppression cocooned the memory, and maturity cemented over childhood hope. I traded imagination for long hours under the guise of patriarchal provision. Yet something burst forth when a new desk was delivered to the office. In loafers, tie flying in my face, I chased down a custodian pushing an enormous cardboard box. Please, I pointed, out of breath. Can I have that? Cubicles became periscopes. People slowed. Eyebrows arched as the box rose behind my desk. A quiet monument to something they'd already learned to outgrow. But I wouldn't be shamed this time. At the end of the day, I secured my prize in the back of my truck. Then the rain came, needles against the windshield. With every red light, I imagined the box dissolving, corners softening, seams surrendering. I dragged the damp box into our garage, parts ripping as I went. No, no, no! Bolting into the house past my wife, who shouted, "Everything all right? I need your hairdryer and tape," I yelled, already sprinting back. "What's going on, Daddy?" came my son's voice. 7 years old, an age when the world was pliable, where miracles didn't need batteries or instruction manuals. "Just a moment, James." My knees ached as I knelt on the concrete, blow dryer whining, hands sticky with tape, willing the cardboard to hold together long enough to become something more, something worthy of him, something I hadn't been. Finally, I straightened. The garage was quiet, except for the sputtering dryer, and I listened for James's footsteps. "Come see, James. What do you think?" His eyes widened, mouth falling open. "That is massive!" He began to laugh. "This is so awesome! What should it be?" "Whatever you want it to be. And it's big enough for both of us." "Then it's our spaceship. Come on, Daddy, we're going to Mars." In my black socks, tie cast aside, I folded myself beside him. Together, we breathed life into our drawings. Buttons, screens, and uneven stars became the box's portraits. James, with a battle scar from a red marker across his face, looked up at me. "Thanks, Daddy." Tears welled in my eyes as we travelled at light speed. You will understand when you have kids. I do now.
So, thank you, Ryan, for what feels like a very true story. You know, something that's coming from a place of truth. But I think Ryan left us a message.
He sure did. Let's play that now.
Hey, Ed and Amanda, this is Ryan from Alabama in America. The story that you have was not the original direction I was taking these prompts. While I did fall in love with the Team Amanda side, with the law specifically, I was writing a story that was going to be more forced in the end. And though I focused a lot on the prose, I ended up throwing it away about 24 hours after I did the competition. But as luck would have it, I did bring home a cardboard box, a very large one for my kids to play in. And as I was playing with them, this story kind of formed in my mind really around the idea of growing up in a home where, sure, there was a law and there was rules around keeping, being clutter-free, but having that concession so a kid could be a kid. And so I really channeled that in this particular story. My question to you guys, though, as you dissect and rip it to pieces, is did the ending land? I had some debate with some of my betas on the last sentence or last couple sentences, and so we went back and forth on a couple of them with much debate, but did it work? And as you dissect it, let me know what you think. And right on.
So, right on, Ryan. And you raised an excellent question there about the ending of your story, but we'll get to that. I think we've got some work to do before we get there. So how about we start with that title?
Yeah, so the title of the story is Recycled. What do you think about that title?
Look, I would say that title does recall the story to me, but the word on its own, maybe I would say it lacks poignancy in a way. Like I get what Ryan's doing with the word there and how we're talking about the past and bringing it into the future. But I think we could do more. I think there's always an opportunity to do a little bit more, make the title a bit ironic maybe, or make it sort of link a little bit closer to that ending as well and sort of tie up in a little bow.
Yeah, look, I agree. And I think Recycled, as you say, does link into some of the themes, but it doesn't really link that heavily into what I think is like the emotional core of the story, which isn't really about recycling. Like the box is recycled. There is an idea of like a new cycle of family and trying better this time. So I guess all of that is in there, but I don't know if that connection is too strong for me. And I don't have an alternative here. I'm not suggesting something else. But yeah, I guess that's just a general comment. If you're going with a single word, like unless it really just encapsulates what your story is about, you can sometimes run the risk of being a little bit too generic as a title.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And look, we won't belabor the point. It's a utilitarian title. It does the job. It does do a little bit more than the bare job. But, as always, we can be pushing to be more memorable to stick in the reader's minds.
Yeah. So let's get straight into the story. And the opening line is, "My tears dripped onto the cardboard box." What I would always say about like your opening is it should create that image in your reader's mind about who the protagonist is, where are they, what's going on. Like your reader has to be able to visualize where you are in the story. And again, I've said this time and time again, from a competition setting standpoint, we're reading story after story, all set in different time periods, different galaxies, whatever the case may be. And we want to be in there as soon as possible so that we can visualize it. So then your story can then take us on that journey.
And look, I don't think it would take much more here. I think it is okay to start with a spotlight on something on your stage, and you're not revealing the whole picture yet. You've just got your spotlight on the thing that you want to draw the reader's attention to, and I think that's fine. And so in this case, we have the main character and we have the box, and we know that the main character's crying, so that's great. So the one question that remains is, who is the main character? And we can't actually see them. We're told my tears, so we know they're crying, but my God. Sorry, I have to interrupt because there are birds outside and they are losing their tiny minds and it's just cheap. So apologies if they're cheeping over the top of us. We're doing our best. Point being, I'd really love to know that it's a little boy who's crying on a cardboard box. And I think that could be implied, and I think you only probably need a few more words. So you could say something like, "My tears dripped onto the cardboard box as my mum stood in front of me, hands waving wildly," or whatever it might be, some action for mum. So we know now it's a child, sort of dealing with their mum, and that's sort of giving us more of a picture. And mum is in this picture because she's about to speak.
Yeah, I was actually going to just suggest flipping around like the first two paragraphs there and just starting with, your father's rule, Jake, no clutter in the house. And then my tears dripped into the cardboard box following after, because it's then cause and effect kind of thing as well. And you get that scene set, you know who the characters are. And you might have to tweak a few things because of that.
No, I think that makes sense. So, not a big thing, but certainly more ideal if you can give us what to picture right away at the very outset. And I just wanted to add a sort of a bit of a global comment just about this section at the start, which is about him as a child. That I do feel there are some issues with the sort of the authenticity of the POV there. So it's complicated by the fact that it's a man who's looking back at his life as a child. But I still feel like it would be more appropriate for this part of the scene for the child to be thinking child thoughts. And there are a few lines here which don't really resonate as something a child would necessarily be thinking. I disregarded the creed for cleanliness, being chief among those. Like, I don't know any child, and I do have some very verbose children who have great vocabularies. They would never think that way. In fact, I don't really know any adult who would just naturally think that way in sort of the heat of the moment. So just working on how a child would see that and what words they would use to describe what's going on. And, even if it was an adult, again, just working on like what words are they using, because that's part of character development, right? Like what words is this character using specifically that maybe another character wouldn't use to describe the same situation?
Yeah.
And even just, I didn't care about the sleek new refrigerator. Sleek new refrigerator, again, not really being the way a child would see it. If they didn't care about the refrigerator, they're probably not even thinking about the refrigerator. They're thinking only about the box and all the opportunities that box represented.
Yeah, and look, I'd like to add a global comment as well at this point, and that is that we have three scenes basically in this story. We have the scene taking place when Jake was a child, then we have the scene in the office, and then we have the scene at home. And general comment is that we often say for flash fiction, 500 words, keep it to a scene if possible. And 3 scenes, I feel, is stretching it. Even though I do like the transition there, it's a very cinematic transition from the childhood scene to like the memory becoming cocooned and now we're in the office. I think that does work well. But I think also we start a story getting invested in like this childhood scene, and then we flip into the office. And while that does deliver circularity at the end of the story, which is very satisfying, I think it is quite a lot to bite off in a very short story.
In fact, that's a thought I had as well, that there were some opportunities here, and I think there's almost always opportunities to bring a piece of flash fiction into a single scene, maybe two, or a single scene that breaks away to backstory and comes back again. But wherever possible, setting it all in one place so that you don't have to create in the reader's mind multiple scenes to look at.
Yeah.
We've got the stage and now we're just looking at the players on it kind of thing. And so some options for this particular story include, for example, and just throwing it out there because I know this is a bit of a personal story, so it can sometimes be hard to see the options, but as an outsider, it's kind of easier for me. And one of those options is for him to build a fort at work.
Yeah.
And, you know, Ed, you like to talk about absurdist things.
Yes.
But that would be quite memorable. So, you know, the box arrives at work. He talks about his co-workers reacting. How would they react if he actually starts building a fort? And I feel like that could be a fun place to take it. And look, that may not be where you do want to take it, and that's fine too. But if so, if we want to talk about this relationship with the son, have him be dragging the box in through the door. We don't need the car trip. In fact, that's an extra scene, the car trip. We don't need the car trip. We don't need the office and finding where the box comes from the desk and all that sort of stuff. I get that it's establishing that he's a working man, but I think we can bring all of that right into the scene where he's dragging it into the garage. And the son is like, what's going on? You can break away into backstory if needed at a little point there. But, you know, it could also just be implied. I don't necessarily think we need the backstory to understand why an adult might suddenly feel inspired to use their childlike imagination again.
Yeah, look, and I think that is a challenge of weaving that backstory in without it becoming like a digression and kind of a mini scene anyway, if you wanted to do that. But as you say, like it is possible to imply that more than flat out like recreate the scene just through the way he reacts. And maybe if it was something that is happening in the workplace and he's challenged, then like that inner child kind of comes out and he pushes back in that moment in the way that he couldn't as a child.
Yeah, there's options, I guess, is the point, and you can sort of take it wherever you like it. But I will say one other thing, and this is critical. So, you know, it's never nice to hear something critical, but being honest, I'm not sure that I found this conversation with the mother particularly emotionally resonant. It feels a bit black and white. It sort of lacks that nuance. She's very much, we don't have clutter in this house and that's our rules, and if you don't like it, too bad. And while I appreciate that that might be someone's real genuine mindset, I feel like just presented it in that very black and white way, it sort of becomes moralistic a little bit, like mum's representing the bad guys. Like, can't mum have a good reason for not wanting clutter in the house? I know I do. I have plenty of good reasons, you know. What are we pushing up against here? Are we pushing up just this immovable object, or are we pushing up against an adult who sees the world through an adult lens and maybe isn't appreciating the value highly enough of the possibilities of a box, and all she can see is the stress and the mess? And so again, like I guess keeping the action in the scene with the son, which did feel more emotionally resonant, I think could add value to the story as well.
So, yeah, I'd like to add one more general observation as well, and that's around the perspective. So we have a first-person perspective in this story, and this is not a universal comment, but generally when I think first-person perspective, I think voice. Like character voice is one of the things you want to bring out in addition to specific insights that that person may have. But given that you're going with a voice that feels like it's a narrator, I feel like that makes the voice feel a little bit distant, because when you see a first-person narrative, you expect the voice to come through in a personal way that for me is not coming through in the story. I'm not sure if all that makes sense.
No, it does. I think when you are writing first person, you need to use the words that the character would naturally be thinking. And I think there are times when this prose, it's beautiful. There's some beautiful lines in here, but they don't feel like necessarily a natural train of thought. They sound more like a beautiful description than a train of thought. So some examples being, I traded imagination for long hours under the guise of patriarchal provision. I just don't feel like that flows as a thought that a person would have. I mean, it may be, but that's my personal feeling.
I did, though, in that same paragraph, I loved that idea of cocooned memory. I thought that was a very good metaphor as well.
And this maturity cemented over childhood hope. Like, these are beautiful lines, so don't get me wrong. It's not me saying get rid of it, it's terrible. I love it. But yeah, maybe it is a case of flipping it back to third person to allow that to be the beautiful description of the narrator and to let the emotion come through in other ways with the character's action.
Yeah.
What I do love about this middle section of the story is that we're introducing some conflict. We've got co-workers who are sort of raising their eyebrows at what's going on. We've got the box starting to disintegrate in the rain. Definitely feeling that conflict and stress as we go along, and that's always a good thing. This idea of the box kind of disintegrating, I think, is one that maybe you could even play on a little bit more. So we have the line, "Then the rain came, needles against the windshield." Again, very beautiful. "With every red light, I imagine the box dissolving, corners softening, seams surrendering." Now, those are beautiful lines, but what they also maybe imply is that he's maybe softening and surrendering. He's got this resolve to take this box home and build something with it. Is he wrestling still with his own self-censorship in doing that? Are his corners softening? Is he about to sort of fall apart and not go through with his plan to build this fort? And I think linking that emotional experience to the conflict that's happening in the story could help heighten that feeling of stress. You know, it's not just about the box falling apart. It's about, well, what does that mean for Jake?
Yeah, and look, this whole sequence, I liked it. It reminded me of The Old Man and the Sea. I'm not sure if you had the same thought, but The Old Man and the Sea, the fisherman catches the fish and then it slowly kind of gets eaten by other fish and he's at risk of losing it. No spoilers to how it ends, but it's the same kind of thing. Like, he's got the thing that he wants and now he's watching it dissolve and fall apart, and his dream is dissolving along with it. And, you know, there's a couple of ways you could have gone with that and a couple of darker endings that you could have chosen, I guess, or you chose the ending with the hopeful ending, I guess. It could have been a hopeless ending or a more like,
all right, sad
unable to, he may have been unable to like capture that childhood thing due to circumstances. So that was another way you could have gone.
Yes, that's a way Ed would have liked much more, as you can probably gather. No, but quite seriously, like, there's always opportunities and ways to think about it, at least. You know, what does that thought provoke if you think about the other ways you might end it?
Yeah, so we then end up back at home in the garage with the box, and the conflict and the tension, the emotion here is like, quick, we're about to lose it all, like, to a bit of rain, but he manages to set up the box.
Yeah, he does. I mean, and this is, the character definitely has plenty of agency in this story. You know, he's grabbing the hairdryer, he's taping it together, he's the one who brought the box home in the first place. So he's definitely fighting against the conflict that has arisen in his way, which is great, and taking action on that. It would have perhaps been nice to see a little bit more of that push and pull of him trying and failing a little bit before he gets there. And I think if we had maybe just stuck within a single scene, we would have had more time to do that, because of course with the setup the way it is, we almost rush through that part a little bit. So opportunity there if you shave off some of that beginning, if we start at home or if we start at the office, whichever way you want to take this story, it gives you more words to kind of have those dominoes, the cause and effect that happens next. Because there is no conflict in him really deciding to take the box home. He's got people staring at him, but he really doesn't care at all about that. So there's no conflict there. It's only once it starts getting wet that we start to see there's an issue, and we could really start the story there.
And so my knees ached as I knelt on the concrete, blow dryer whining, hands sticky with tape, willing the cardboard to hold together long enough to become something more, something worthy of him, something I hadn't been. And when we talk about like the emotional effect of the story and talking about Poe and single effect, the single effect that you're driving towards is really that idea, I feel, of becoming something that you haven't been, like breaking that cycle, being old enough to see where your parents perhaps had the wrong idea and trying to fix that for the next generation. And I think that sets up the ending very well, like that circularity of the ending. But I think also a lot of what we're talking about here is simplifying the story and removing the bits that introduce all these extra words that you need to basically put in to describe them, and so you can focus on that single effect. So if you were to go back and rework it, whether it's in the office or in the house, then I think that's the effect, that's the single emotion that you need to push into.
Yeah, and look, you know, I had the note that that's the bit I would have loved to have seen expanded, this idea of not being enough for his son. And I guess kind of, you know, it's one of the most, in my view, poignant songs of all time, Cats in the Cradle, right? Yeah. This idea of you're becoming the thing that you most hate, and you're just getting swept away into growing old and everything that comes with it, and you forget what it's like to be a child. And I think that, you know, that is a really poignant thing. And so if we leaned into that more from the outset, potentially emotionally we would get a stronger effect. So one way of working with that, for example, we've got the conflict with the mum at the start, and look, we've already suggested maybe we would lose that part and cut straight to the scene, but let's say that was to stay. Why is the conflict not with the dad? You know, I get that he's at work. I do get that. And so that's an important component. But at the same time, it's this father-son thing that we're exploring.
Yeah, true.
I feel like the conflict with the dad would potentially, like whatever you needed to do to make the dad be there would be a great opportunity to really get that father and son thing happening. Like, why is the wife there? We don't need her. She does nothing in the story apart from say what's going on. We can really narrow that focus right down and really get into this idea of becoming something worthy of your son. Because as it stands at the moment, from the outset, he's already got that childlike wonder. He's back. He's grabbing the box. He's like, let's go. I'm getting home. No, I need the hairdryer. And like, where's the catalyst for that change in him from being unworthy of his son to suddenly being very excited about the box? We don't actually see that conflict play out. And that's the central conflict for this story. You know, we have some tangential conflict around the cardboard box disintegrating or people looking at him funny. But the real conflict at the heart of this story is his internal battle with himself to overcome what he was taught as a child to be the father he thinks he should be. And so I think even with box disintegrating, like I said, there's opportunities to make that mirror what's going on inside of him to really bring us to this turning point in the story where he does become the father that he wants to be.
So I guess the final scene, if we take it to the ending, is the moment he has with his son. So he presents the box and his son is maybe a little bit confused at first and then realizes the potential and they have fun with it. And that's the resolution. It comes full circle.
I really enjoyed this image of him in my black socks, tie cast aside. I folded myself beside him. That's really beautiful language and really encapsulates like the discarding of the tie, you know, is the setting aside that work.
Yeah.
Like I get that. I get the subtext of that. And I think more of that would be really great.
Yeah.
Why is it that his son's kind of so, oh, okay, let's build a rocket ship then. Why is he not more surprised that his dad, who has always been strict and controlled, that he's suddenly being fun? Like we need to sort of work in those reaction beats as well to the change that's going on.
The realistic ending as a parent would be that you bring the box home and you show your child the wonderful thing you brought them and then they're like, anyway, back to what I was doing before.
Whatever.
And they just don't give a shit.
Yeah.
That's the parental experience.
Well, that's also the cats in the cradle message, right? It's like by the time you realize it's too late, that's the very sad. We don't want to go there. That's too sad. I'm going to start crying. But yeah, you're right. But let's have a happy ending. It is okay, Ed. All right, to occasionally have a happy ending. I just don't want to have to pay extra. You know what I mean?
It's a rip-off.
Okay, but look, we're at the ending now, and Ryan's big question in his message at the start of the episode there was, did the ending work? And he had some conflicting feedback from his beta readers. Did those last couple of lines land? And what's your view on that, Ed?
Yeah, I think the last couple of lines landed really well for me. We get some circularity. We get that same phrase that was given by a parent earlier on, now recontextualized to mean the opposite in the final line. I think that's very satisfying because you've kind of gone on that journey. When you get that recontextualized moment, the penny kind of drops.
I agree totally with that, and I think it is a great place to end it. I'm going to just issue a challenge though, because Ryan's got some conflicting feedback there, and so I'm going to try and think, all right, well, what might it have been that didn't land for some of these beta readers? And my suggestion is this. I think there's another way that you could use that same line and have it land a little bit harder. You will understand when you have kids needs to be the actual final line. And I think a way you could set that up is to have him watching his son and seeing himself in his son and seeing the light in his eyes and being so proud that he has at least this one time been that father he wanted to be. And for his son and almost for himself, he's healing his inner child in that moment. So watching his son have this experience, maybe crying, and then the son says, "What's wrong, Dad?"
Yeah.
And he says, "You'll understand when you have kids." Yeah. And I think bringing that positivity into the message, like you say, recontextualizing it, but being able to say it to his own son after we've said his mum said it, but maybe it was his dad who said it to him so many years ago, could have perhaps given that extra little bit of oomph. Because I do agree the circularity is satisfying and it's not just repeating it, it's adding something else, something new at the end to that same phrase. But that's maybe just a little bit of a suggestion of how we could use it to its maximum potential. But overall, I did think it landed well. I think these parts that we love, I feel like the story really hits its stride towards the end, like maybe in that last third of the story when he's with his son. And that's when it's all coming out and feeling very real and raw. And if we sort of kept the story in that moment, if that was the scene that we were watching from the outset and really leaning into the why, like what's motivating him and seeing that cause and effect of him sort of struggling with his inner demons, if you will, to eventually create this change and heal his inner child through his relationship with his son, I think could have really been quite powerful.
Feel free to disagree with me on this
I
one.
love disagreeing with you.
You do. And this is a personal thing. This is for me, but maybe you'll agree or not. When a story is so positive and uplifting, I kind of push back against it a little bit.
I feel like Dean's the same. To be honest.
And I feel like there's a little bit of a warning to issue that not everyone will react to like a positive message like this in a positive way. And I don't know if this is a personal thing, but I feel like sometimes when you do have that positive spin, it needs to be handled with a little bit of delicacy. We talk about going all in on emotions and all in on like single effects. I feel personally, sometimes you need to pull back a little bit on that. Otherwise it becomes sugary, I guess, in its tone. I would just issue that as a general comment that it might be worthwhile to pull back sometimes and let the reader sit with it more than you're putting that on them, if that makes sense. And it's going to be hard for me to define and give you specifics on that. But what might help that is a little bit more conflict, a little bit more edge, some pushback against that at moments in your story. But maybe that points to what some people found about the ending is that it is very positive. It's a very positive ending and it's earned, don't get me wrong, but it's an ending that is kind of laden with a message as well.
And look, I think a point I made, and my point came a bit earlier on with this interaction with the mum where she's like, no, it's our rules and you don't have clutter. And she was just becoming a little bit of a caricature of a strict mum.
Yeah.
And we weren't getting that rawness and realness from her. We were getting just this kind of picture of a bit of an ogre character. And so it becomes this kind of moralistic kind of fairy tale kind of thing. It doesn't feel as authentic because we're not dealing with a real woman here. It feels like we're just dealing with a stereotype, if you will. So I think that's part of it. I think another part of it for this story is that, you know, we do have conflict and we've talked about that already and how we could maybe work with that. But there doesn't really feel like much of a risk at any point in this story that he is going to be like his dad.
Yeah.
You know, he grabs the box straight away. He doesn't care what his co-workers think. He's straight in the car with it. He gets home, it's wet, and he's already got a solution for that. Yeah. His wife's like, what's going on? His kid comes in and the kid's like, right, let's make a rocket ship. And there's just no point at which anybody challenges any of that to say, hang on, is this the Jake we know? So there's just not that feeling of change, I guess. He sort of starts out ready to use this box. And while he's reflecting on a childhood sort of memory, it doesn't seem to be impacting him greatly in this moment. There's some implications, but it's maybe not coming through strongly enough to feel like a risk.
I wonder if it could have been different if he'd gotten it home and it was all wet and he was like, oh, that was a waste of time. I'm going to chuck it in the bin. And his son had seen the potential in it in the same way he had and like dragged it out of the bin. And that was what triggered like that moment of change for him as like, oh, now I remember when I was a child and
could still see a possibility in something that was maybe garbage.
I guess you don't get the whole, from the point of view of the character, like I'm changing things for the next generation. That doesn't happen. It's more like an external thing has caused me to realize something. So it's a different conclusion, but it is, as you say, it's like less moralistic. It's more natural maybe.
Yeah, it's flowing from the events of the story rather than being sort of overlaid on top of it.
And also because the characters in that version have a bit more edge and they're not perfect.
Yeah, look, I think what this boils down to for this story is that like the prose is there, it's got the emotion. These things are very important. I personally find emotional resonance to be a really core component of what makes a story stand out to me. So those elements are there, and what it comes down to, it feels like, is more just opportunities to explore what would make this story hit even harder and feel more authentic, I guess, and feel like, and therefore more resonant for us. So a lot of things being done right here, some beautiful lines. The idea itself is very cute and relatable, and I think you can feel the heart in it.
Yeah, I think the heart goes a long way in these stories, because being left with an emotion at the end of a story is exactly what we're looking for. Like, we get to the end of it and you feel something. And you definitely do in this story, and I think the last couple of lines go a long way to making that happen.
So, yeah, let's talk about the prompts. Okay, so the word prompt was drawings, and that was one of our more popular uses of the draw word. And the drawings being, of course, you know, the controls on the rocket ship and so on. So that worked really well. The chasing, well, that was Jake chasing after the box. So, of course, you know, if you lose that scene, well, then you lose the chasing. That doesn't matter anywhere outside this competition, so that's okay. But even if you did need to still submit it to the competition and meet that prompt, I feel like chasing is something that you could easily weave into this story. You know, we're sort of chasing dreams, we're chasing like a feeling. And then finally, the prominent featuring of a law. And in this case, it's more of a figurative law about house rules. And that's perfectly great. That works just fine for those purposes. You know, our house, our rules kind of thing. And clearly that was, you know, those prompts were working together to inspire this story, which I love to see.
So thank you so much, Ryan, for your story, and thank you for your kind words on
I know.
the
Like, do you
podcast.
feel guilty now? I feel super guilty.
Yeah.
But we do love your writing, and we know that you know your way around a competition.
absolutely.
So I'm sure you will receive this critique in the way it's intended to just help you win more.
Exactly. That's why we're here. But that wraps it up for this episode, and we'll be back in a week's time for our 4th Daredevil for this round. But until then, right on.
Right on.
We hope you enjoyed this special Daredevil episode of Not Quite Right. If you have thoughts on this story, follow us on social media and join the conversation. And if you'd like to participate in the next round of the competition, head over to our website at notquiteright.com. That's WRITE.
Something doesn't seem quite right.
With every red light, I imagined the box dissolving, corners softening, seams surrendering.
That's hot.
Bring back flesh fiction. I reckon.
Yeah.
I dragged the damp box into our garage, parts ripping as I went.
Pants ripping. We need to do recycled gone sexual. Sorry.
Bolting into the house past my wife, who shouted, "Everything all right?"
English accent comes.
You all right? What's all this then?
Oh, God. Come on.
All right.
We're not even halfway through.
I know. Who shouted, "Everything all right?"
No, why is she got an English accent?
Sorry. Now she's English in my head. Bolting into the house past my wife, who shouted, "Everything all right?
That's not shouting.
Everything all right?" What's wrong with that?
Why is she?
She's not.
That was an English accent.
It was Australian. Everything all right? Come on. Governor?
I beg of you to read it in a normal accent.
I am. It's an Australian accent.
Gonna have to do.
Can you do it? Can you do it? Just
Everything all right?
everything all right?
You could. It's
Everything all right?
It's this. All right. It's like this.
Okay. Everything all right?
That'll do.
Everything all right?
Thank God. Oh my God. Yes, that's fine.
I need your air dryer and tape. I yelled.
I'm sweating. Oh my God. My damp box.
My parts are ripping right now.
I'm just concerned because it's
Okay.
it's dissolving. This chair is dissolving, corners softening, seams surrendering. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Oh my God. Okay.
Okay. You ready?
I'm all right. You're right.
I'm all right. I yelled, already sprinting back. What's going on, Daddy?
I've developed an accent from watching Peppa Pig, Daddy.
I'm no longer the boy you once knew.
Oh, it's all right. Have your corny, son. It's the heat. It's the heat. It's just unacceptable. Oh, my God.
What's going on, Daddy? I'm I don't know what. I don't know. I don't know. I don't
There's
know.
something wrong with you.